first question to you is what about Katie's script made you want to direct this film?
Yeah, a couple of things. There was just the concept felt very appealing to me. A woman who's never had good sex decides she wants to and hires a sex worker. And the fact that it was set in a single hotel room, I found really thrilling. I was like, oh yeah, I really want to do this. And also Emma Thompson was already attached. So I was like, well, the idea and Emma Thompson together is just beautiful. And I could see it. And I thought, well, I want to see Emma play that role. I'd like to be part of it. And I want to focus on two actors and deal with intimacy and connection. And that's what was offered in that script.
Speaking of that vulnerability, there's a lot of vulnerability with these two leads in some situations. How did you work with them to make them comfortable in filming this?
I mean, they're both really excellent actors, so they would have done enough work on their own, actually, in all truth. But I really love rehearsals, and I really liked the feeling that we would get into a shared we would create a shared history and be on the same page with each other. So we did a lot of talking first before we even met each other in person. And then we came to a rehearsal room for a week and everything else had to kind of push aside, and we were just in a room and we did a lot of exercises, where we would do things physically. They would draw each other's bodies. They would talk about the difference between their bodies and the characters' bodies. We would talk about the ideas and kind of come to a shared purpose. We shared things with each other as well, I suppose, about our lives. But basically, we just came to a point where we felt like we had a shared vision of the story and the way we wanted the characters to be. And then the job on set was just to make sure we were capturing that, and I just felt like I just had needed to be very honest with them and constantly ask them, to keep checking that they were okay with what we were doing, that they were enthusiastically okay with what we were doing. Yeah.
Recently, we were reminded in this kind of film space, it's okay for Tom Cruise at almost 60 to be a sex symbol, but it's rare to see a woman of Emma Thompson's age be a sex symbol. Why is that?
This is a really big question. Oh my gosh. Because we have this idea that women and their bodies are there to look a certain way, I think. There is a kind of body ideal and the most important thing about a woman and her body is how it looks for someone else. And so as it starts to change, we don't see very much of that. We see, always a preened, always a youthful, always a very, very limited vision of body. And so we don't get to enjoy all the gorgeous things that happen and shift in a woman's body across her life. We don't get to appreciate that because we're told it's not lovely and it's not good enough. Men, we don't do the same thing in the same way. That men are allowed to be attractive because of who they are and them being, rather than what they look like, rather than it being so precise and specific, I think. But I hope that that's shifting, and I hope that as we all start to appreciate our bodies for what they do rather than how they look, that we start to open up and see how gorgeous and seductive and interesting and everybody is,
Sorry. I love the balance, right? The balance of the comedy, and I love the balance of the seriousness, but then also the story that we're telling within this film. What was it like trying to balance that in the director's chair?
Really fun, because I mean, I'm quite a serious person, and the purpose and the meaning is very important to me. So all the time that's a fundamental thing, and the truth, like feeling something that feels true. But at the same time, one of the things that appealed to me about this was that it is comedy, and it's very freeing for me as a director, even to just say that something is comedy, because then I'm like, it doesn't have to be so weighty. Everyone thinks drama is very weighty and heavy. And I like that there's like, that we can laugh, we can release, we can have all of these moments that even if they're important, aren't heavy. And Emma, I asked the writer and producer and Emma at the beginning of the project when I first came on and we were adjusting things. I asked them to do this little survey that I made. And one of the questions I asked them was like, what's the most important thing about this film? And Emma just wrote funny, 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 And I really loved that we were trying to hold on to that all the way through the making. But that didn't mean that we didn't have these deep dive conversations and really care about other things. It wasn't like, guys, it's got to be funny, so let's not talk too seriously. We allowed ourselves to go really far and to treat it really seriously, but then always think about the audience and the pleasure. And fun is part of that pleasure, as well as truth and as well as other things, you know? So I think it's great. Like, I think I'm just going to say everything's a comedy from now on, just because I think it's really freeing.
Yeah, I love that. It was just you're having these deep, serious moments, and then just a nice little comedy relief there. But then it was just blended perfectly together.
Yeah, and Emma's very funny, and Katie, who wrote the script, is hilarious. And so, even at times, we'd be doing this balance of me kind of making sure that something was being said, and Katie being like, "And here's this joke." It was good fun.
That's awesome. Obviously, Emma Thompson's Emma Thompson, right? But for me, Darryl McCormick he was just amazing in this film. Like, he brought that sense of security, obviously, to this character. But what's it like kind of seeing him kind of in this role?
Well, I'm so happy that he comes across so well, because meeting him and starting to work with him, I just was really taken aback by he has a very generous spirit. And it's something that we were really looking for in the role of Leo, someone who could kind of be calm, even if like there's a lot going on under the surface, could have a kind of calm and could sit opposite another person and see all the things going on for them, but not be kind of put off by that, but kind of see somebody for who they are and want to sort of understand what they want, And Darryl is that kind of person. I find him a exceptionally calm and very loving person, very gentle. And yet he's physically really imposing, or he could be imposing, but he never feels like that. And I think that was really interesting for the role, And of course, he then also just had to just be a really good actor, like have all the technique and the challenge of that, and do it really fast opposite Dame Emma Thompson. And he did all of that, We definitely couldn't have got through the shoot in 19 days if Darryl was anything other than excellent, But what I think he also has is a physicality that is really intriguing to watch, that kind of is a bit feline. It's kind of both what you would call masculine and feminine. And he brings that in with such a sure hand, And I really think that shifted the role of Leo and really expanded it. And even once he came on, we worked a lot on that character. It continued to change that storyline when Darryl was there, just so that we were landing it with him in mind, Yeah.
My final question is, what is something that you learned about yourself working on this project?
God, actually, there's a lot of things. So I was just kind of going through them in my head. It's really interesting, the body stuff that I was talking about before, because to make a film like this, I think intellectually that's always been an idea that's been really important to me. But like all of us, we're soaked in a culture that, that brainwashes us to believe these things about ourselves. But on this film, I don't think I got to the end of it and was like, well, that's all gone now. Like, I'm fine. But I actually felt I had to action some of that. I had to actively say, yeah, this isn't the important thing about your own body. Like, I had to show up for those two actors and reflect back to them what I was asking them to do. And I think that does shift you. It's not like you suddenly go, now we all come out of this film loving the way our bodies look. I think for each of us, maybe we came out of the film appreciating things about our bodies that were nothing to do with how they looked. Yeah.